The Danish parliament has adopted a new policy of seizing property from asylum seekers should they want to enter their country and live there. Now, this is making headlines because of the amount they plan on seizing from asylum seekers, and some are suggesting that this isn't really about what members of parliament say it's about. It's really meant to serve as a deterrent to anyone who's seeking asylum in the country. So the passing of the so-called jewelry bill allows the seizure of valuables worth more than 10,000 Danish kroner, about $1,453. So items of special sentimental value, such as wedding rings, engagement rings, family portraits, decorations, and medals are exempted, and that's according to the Danish Ministry of Immigration, Integration, and Housing. However, watches, mobile phones, and computers can be confiscated. The law was passed in Parliament by 81 votes to 27, with one abstention.
So that is deeply depressing. Now, I want to give Denmark credit in the first place for welcoming so many immigrants into their country. In America, we're still having a debate as to whether we should allow 10,000 refugees in when we're a country of 300 million people, more than 300 million people. They have allowed, I believe, 20,000 in just the last year, and they are far, far smaller. Sweden, which is also cracking down, has allowed 170,000 asylum seekers, and they're only 9.5 million people. Mm-hmm. That's the most refugees per capita of any country. So I tell you all that as a context for two reasons. One, don't harsh on them too much. They've done a great job of taking in refugees, a million times better than America and so many other countries across the world. The second reason is, having taken in so many refugees, there are normally going to be problems that come from that, yes, right? So you've got people who are displaced from their homes who couldn't possibly have much money to begin with. So at some point, could there come crime out of the desperation of that situation? Yes, or because they're bad guys, right? Mm-hmm. Because some percentage of 170,000 people are going to be bad guys, right? And I don't mean bad guys like ISIS. I mean bad guys like he wants your watch, right?
I mean, there were the attacks in Cologne, Germany, and some percentage of those attackers were asylum seekers, right? Not all from Syria, but many of them did come from Northern African countries, Middle Eastern countries. And so, look, no one is saying that every asylum seeker is going to be a good person. There are going to be some that break laws, and they should face the consequences for that 100%.
And so, in this regard, I get that there's a reaction back now, going, whoa, just, we got to draw the lines here. I just think they drew the wrong line. Even though, if you ask an immigrant or a refugee in this case, hey, would you rather have them let you into the country, but then you got to give up your watch and whatever is worth over, $1,400? Probably the answer is yes. But still, it seems more humane and more important to Denmark's culture. Better to say, hey, I'm going to take less refugees, but I'm going to treat the ones I take in incredibly decently. Because it isn't about them as much as it is about you and who you are. So when you start taking people's jewelry, it feels super ugly, right? So in the Holocaust, the Nazis seized the valuables of the Jews. Now that's not a proper analogy. I know people have made that analogy because in this case, the people of Denmark, Sweden, etc. Let's stick with Denmark because this law is in Denmark. Aren't the ones persecuting them in the first place. They're the ones protecting them. So the proper analogy would be if Jews had come to the U.S. fleeing the Nazis, which they did. We rejected them. But if instead we had come in and said, okay, Jews, come on in, but now give me all your stuff. Give me your jewels and your watch and your this and your that. That's ugly. It
is ugly. And look, to be honest, there are good reasons for why they want to do this, but I think that there's also an underlying reason that some are speculating about, but I think that there's a lot of credibility to it. So look, Denmark is a very liberal state in terms of their policies. So I'll give you a quote, and I think this quote makes all the sense in the world. All Danish citizens and refugees coming here receive universal health care. You receive education from preschool to university, and you receive elderly care. You receive language training and integration training free of charge, paid for the government. The only demand that we set to measure this is if you have the means to pay for your housing and for your food, regardless of whether you are a Dane or whether you are a refugee, then you should. So look, that's a point about how, look, our government, our system is going to provide a great living situation for you, but that costs money. And if you can help us out, then we want you to help us out in any way you can. But I have no doubt in my mind that there's an element of this that's meant to be a deterrent. So yes, there's the financial component of it, right? But there's also something else that they did. They tripled the wait time that a refugee needs to go through in order to apply to have a family member join them. So for instance, if you are an asylum seeker who's in Denmark and your daughter or your child, whatever, is still in Syria or some other war-torn country, you used to be able to apply after a year. They've now tripled that to 3 years, in some cases 4 years. And so who would want to be separated from their family member for that long?
So to give you a concrete example, there's a woman who has her daughter still stuck in Syria, and she's like, I guess I have to leave Denmark because that's my 9-year-old daughter. What am I going to do, wait for 3-4 years until she can join me in Denmark? I mean, any mom could understand why you can't wait. So that's not lost on the people who passed this law. They know that it's a deterrent. They know that it's going to limit the number of refugees coming in and maybe even cause some refugees to leave. In fact, the right-wing Danish People's Party said this was part of an effort to keep European culture, okay? So it's not really subtle. Now, on the issue of Denmark being a liberal society that provides all these things for free, and hence you got to pay back, that's absolutely true, but not in this way. So my point here would be, don't do the ugly seizing of the property, right? But once they come in, of course, then they have, I like the integration that they do. We've talked about that on a previous show where they say, hey, these are our rules, these are our laws, and partly this is our culture. So here's what you can do and what is legal to do in this country. Here's what is illegal to do this in this country, and let me be goddamn clear about that.
Honestly, it's assimilation training, which to some extent is necessary. I have no problem with that because they do need to learn the rules. They need to know the laws, and if they break those laws, they should suffer the consequences.
So one concrete example is if you say, well, it's my culture that I get to rule over my wife, so if she talks back to me, I get to hit her. No, you don't. That's a violation of the law, and you'll be put in prison. You need to understand that if you're going to live in this country. And then secondly, I'm going to help you get a job to simulate whatever it is. And when you do, then you pay your taxes. And yes, they're higher in Denmark because you get all this free stuff. And that's how you pay Denmark back. And you pay Denmark back by being a great citizen that assimilates to the degree that you need to follow the rules of Denmark. And then maybe one day be a great enough citizen to help others who needed help at that time, right? Because that is what Denmark has done in the past. And they've been great to these refugees in the past and to others in the past. And then that new generation of people who are now Danish or one day will become Danish can return that favor. I think that's the right way you pay back Denmark.
I agree with you. Absolutely.